reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. Jesus said to the disciples, "I am the true vine, and my Abba God is the vine grower, who cuts off every branch in me that does not bear fruit, but prunes the fruitful ones to increase their yield. You have been pruned already, thanks to the word that I have spoken to you. Live on in me, as I do in you. Just as a branch cannot bear fruit of itself apart from the vine, neither can you bear fruit apart from me. I am the vine. You are the branches. Those who live in me, and I in them, will bear abundant fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Those who do not live in me are like withered, rejected branches, to be picked up and thrown on the fire and burned. If you live on in me, and my words live on in you, ask whatever you want, and it will be done for you. My Abba God will be glorified if you bear much fruit, and thus prove to be my disciples." The good news of salvation. Good evening. Tonight is the 6th Sunday of Easter. As some of you know, last Sunday we had a bit of a snafu, and our homilist addressed tonight's gospel about love last week. So we've decided to switch things around a bit, and I am preaching on last Sunday's gospel of the true vine. Now, it's a bit of an irony, because this gospel passage is, well, I'll just say it, it is one of the most mischaracterized readings of the entire Gospel of John. Now, it is customary at this moment to pivot from the metaphor of the true vine to nature. And yes, we can all find God's glory in nature. We've already heard that homily, and I'm not going there because that is not really what the gospel is about. So tonight, I want to take us down the road less traveled to what Jesus Christ's claim as the true vine is actually about. Truth be told, it's about Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and overindulgence. Some of you know him by his Roman name Bacchus. Others of you know him by the old British pronunciation Dionysus. But that's one more thing the Brits got wrong. In Greece, he is called Dionysus. So what does this old pagan god have to do with us, Jesus, and the gospel? It is an open secret in the patristic sources, which most people don't read anymore, that the Gospel of John was in some kind of, shall we say, conversation with Dionysus. Or to put it another way, the early Christians, the first audience of the Gospel of John, were in direct competition with the cult of Dionysus. Now, Jesus Christ and Dionysus actually have a bit in common. They were both the offspring of a divine father and a human mother. They both bestow a wine ritual on their devotees. They both count a large group of women as their devotees, and they both were subjected to violent deaths and were then miraculously resurrected. Jesus Christ, as well as his chronicler, John the Evangelist, they were both very well aware of this parallel. In the Gospel of John, Jesus keeps doing things and saying things into metaphor to suggest that Dionysus' days are numbered. Jesus is stronger and truer than this old god of overindulgence. And when Dionysus was widely known as the vine, Jesus' claim as the true vine is a direct affront. Clement of Alexandria is not normally considered a sexy topic for homilies. But allow me, if I may, to draw out a patristic gem that is truly fascinating. Clement was an early theologian. He taught at the Catechetical School of Alexandria in Egypt just 100 years after Jesus. He lived from 150 to 215 AD. Riffing off the Jesus-Dionysus connection in John's Gospel, Clement wrote, "O madman, throw off your headband, throw off your fawn skin, get sober. I will show you the logos and the mysteries of the logos." Clement goes on to chastise the drunken followers of Dionysus and to suggest that real power comes from soberly studying the mysterious logos, which, as we know, is the centerpiece of the Gospel of John. Clement comes off a bit curmudgeon-y, but it's important as an early witness to this Dionysian overtone in the Gospel of John. And it's a verification that this Dionysus argument that scholars are now putting forward is not just a modern projection. So, the Gospel passage that I read tonight is a wordplay with Dionysus and the art of growing grapes. Jesus suggests that if we have behaviors that are like fruitless branches, what are we waiting for? Cut it out. It will then give us, like a grapevine, more energy for the branches that are fruitful. I don't normally speak about my personal life up here, but some of you may know that I recently cut out a certain man who admittedly was Greek. And I was getting counsel from every direction to cut him out, and I did. And then my art writing caught on fire. All of these projects happened. and I feel more alive. It's a funny thing, we don't realize how much time and energy we are wasting on something until we cut it out. And then somewhat organically, other more fruitful things grow up in its place. Now, Jesus goes on to explain that we cannot bear fruit without him. Now, I don't know if you know your botany, but it takes a hell of a lot of work for that grapevine to make the grapes. So it's a bit of an irony here. Now, despite that adage, you are what you eat, when individuals drink wine made from grapes, they suddenly lose interest in the hard work that it takes to make the said grapes. Did that land? Okay. And Jesus is playing with this irony in the passage between the perseverance it takes for plants to make fruit and the sloth and oblivion of imbibing. My friends, the cult of Dionysus is not only a footnote of ancient history. The cult of overindulgence is alive and well today, although it goes by an easier to pronounce name: treating ourselves. I am not going to tick off all the ways that people today are treating themselves. We all know about those little ways that we like to overindulge and how those little choices add up. Are we really being good to ourselves when we damage our physical and mental health? I want to talk tonight, finally, about the grapes of wrath. The grapes of wrath traces back to the book of Revelation, 14:19. It is a metaphor for how much sin grows when people overindulge instead of getting to work. Julia Ward Howe would reference these grapes of wrath in her famous 1861 song. I think you probably know it, the Battle Hymn of the Republic. John Steinbeck would go on to write a very famous novel that many of us have read, The Grapes of Wrath. And in Selma, in 1965, right after Martin Luther King made his famous and often quoted declaration that the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice, he then himself pivots to that old song that we are going to sing tonight. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He is trampling out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored. The grapes of wrath. Dr. King knew how many people were angry about race, angry about structural inequalities, but drinking themselves into a stupor. Dr. King knew about how many oppressors felt a tinge of guilt about the harm they were causing, but instead of getting to work, they drank themselves into a stupor. The grapes of wrath. We know them all too well as LGBTQIA+ people. As the old saying of the Cheyenne people goes, our pleasures are shallow, our sorrows are deep. There is a deep pain that many of us feel. Some now call it the velvet rage. It traces back to years of alienation, and it can be appealing to indulge for a moment, to numb that pain. The grapes of wrath. These indulgent pleasures might be soothing in the moment, but they do not get at the roots of the sorrows or make those sorrows go away. In fact, very often, they make them worse. Or, as Frida Kahlo, queer herself, once put it, I tried to drown my sorrows, but the bastards learned how to swim. The grapes of wrath. In the long term, overindulgence makes our pains worse, not better. And that rage grows and festers, leading us to indulge even more, and a vicious cycle forms. The grapes of wrath. Meanwhile, our all-loving God is there, ready to support us if we choose to do the work and to heal. As we read in the Gospel of John, those who live in me and I in them will bear abundant fruit. Remember when Clement of Alexandria said, "Get sober, and I will show you the mystery of the Logos"? Amazing things happen when we decide to let God's truth go marching on and to lean in to learning more about the mysteries that perplex us. When we decide to live our lives with justice, moderation, and balance, we get to do something even more powerful than drunken oblivion. We get to bring our aspirations to fruition. We get to make our dreams come true. Dr. King had a dream. He didn't sit and Netflix and chill. He didn't drink himself into a stupor. Yes, he had some flaws, but he was a man who threw himself into his activism and his work. Far more, with all due respect, than many people today. And Martin Luther King knew the key was to say no to the grapes of wrath and to say yes to Christ as the true vine. To let God grow something inside of him instead of getting trashed at the bar and stewing in rage. May we all pray for that same strength to trample out the vintage where the grapes of wrath are stored and let God's truth go marching on.
Amen.